The massive hull of the alien flagship, Zenith Premarch, loomed over Earth like an omnipotent sentinel, casting a shadow so vast it blotted out the sun over entire cities. The air beneath it grew unnervingly still, the temperature dropping as if the planet itself recoiled from the alien presence. The world held its collective breath as the alien overlords broadcast their declaration of victory across all frequencies. The projection of the alien commander, a towering figure with sleek, metallic skin and glowing, angular eyes, hovered over the ruins of New York City. His voice was a deep, reverberating hum that carried an air of absolute authority. "Humans," the commander intoned, his words translated into every known language, "your resistance is futile. Your armies are vanquished. Your defenses are in shambles. We, the Orythan Dominion, have claimed this world. Surrender, and you may yet survive as subjects under our rule." In the subterranean remains of a once bustling subway station, a small group of survivors watched the transmission on a flickering monitor. The leader of this ragtag band, Captain Adrian Cole, leaned against a cracked pillar, his face illuminated by the screen's pale glow. Despite the grim situation, a sly smirk tugged at his lips. "They think they've won," he said, his voice carrying an edge of defiance. Beside him, Lieutenant Maya Torres frowned. "We've lost almost every major city, Adrian. Our satellites are down, our forces scattered. They've got orbital dominance. How are you so calm?" Adrian tapped the side of his head with a finger. "Because they forgot one very important thing, Maya. Rule number 1. His gaze flicked briefly to a faded photograph tucked into his pocket, a reminder of what he was fighting to protect. Her brow furrowed. "Rule number 1? He grinned, a flash of teeth in the dim light. "Never underestimate humanity." Maya shook her head, exasperated. "That's not exactly a plan." "It's not just a plan," Adrian replied. "It's the plan. And we're about to remind them why Earth is called the cradle of ingenuity." The Orythan's dominion had relied on two key strengths: overwhelming technological superiority and psychological warfare. Their broadcasts of dominance, combined with their relentless assaults, eroded morale across the globe. Entire cities fell into despair, their inhabitants paralyzed by the belief that resistance was futile, a mental shadow as potent as their physical invasion. Their fleets of shimmering, crystalline ships and energy-based weaponry rendered traditional human defenses nearly useless. Yet even as the Dominion's fleets dominated the skies and their ground forces methodically suppressed resistance, whispers of a counterstrike began to ripple through the remnants of humanity. Adrian's group wasn't just any resistance cell. They were the architects of Project Revenant, a last-ditch contingency born from desperation and sheer human audacity. The team, comprised of engineers, hackers and ex-military operatives, had salvaged scraps of alien tech from downed Orythan drones and reverse-engineered it into something uniquely human. "All right, listen up," Adrian called, his voice commanding attention. Around him, the team gathered, their faces etched with equal parts exhaustion and determination. "We've got one shot at this, and I'm not sugarcoating it. The odds are slim. But slim odds are better than no odds." He gestured to a holographic display cobbled together from scavenged components. The projection showed a rotating image of the Orythan flagship. The Zenith Premarch is their nerve center. It's coordinating their fleet, relaying orders, and keeping their ground forces in sync. We take it out and we throw their entire operation into disarray. "And how exactly do we do that?" asked Samir, the team's tech specialist, his voice tinged with skepticism. "That thing's shielded to hell and back." "Glad you asked," Adrian said, his smirk returning. "Meet our ace in the hole, the Trojan." He motioned toward a tarp-covered object in the corner of the room. Maya pulled the tarp away, revealing what looked like a sleek missile, its surface etched with glowing runes and pulsating circuits. A collective murmur rippled through the group. "What you're looking at," Adrian continued, "is a hybrid weapon. Half human ingenuity, half Orythan arrogance. We've embedded their own tech into this warhead, disguised it as a harmless data probe. Tested in simulations and on captured Orythan systems, it's designed to exploit their overconfidence and bypass their security protocols entirely. Once it's aboard their ship, it'll infiltrate their systems and trigger a cascade failure." "And then?" Maya asked, arms crossed. Adrian's grin widened. "And then we give them a taste of entropy." The plan was bold, bordering on reckless. A small, cloaked shuttle would deliver the Trojan directly to the flagship's hangar bay. To even reach the ship, the team had to navigate through a gauntlet of orbital defenses and patrols. One wrong move, and the entire mission would collapse before it even began. As they prepared for the launch, the mood in the underground base was a mix of tension and camaraderie. Adrian walked among his team, offering words of encouragement and checking preparations. When he reached Maya, she was strapping on her gear with practiced efficiency. "You ready?" he asked. She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I'm ready. But are you sure this Trojan will work?" "Maya," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder, "if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the universe loves irony. The Orithans think they're invincible. They've got no idea what's coming." The shuttle's engines hummed softly as it ascended through the Earth's atmosphere, its cloaking field rendering it invisible to Orithon sensors. Inside, beads of sweat formed on the crew's brows despite the cool air, their breaths shallow with anticipation. The subtle vibrations of the shuttle's movement heightened the tension, each hum of the engines a reminder of how close they were to discovery. Inside, the team sat in silence, their faces lit by the faint glow of the controls. Adrian sat in the cockpit, his hands steady on the controls despite the storm of emotions churning within him. "Approaching the target," Samir reported, his voice low. "Cloaking field holding. No sign of detection." "Good," Adrian replied. "Let's keep it that way." As the massive bulk of the Zenith Primarch came into view, the sheer scale of the flagship struck them anew. It was a fortress in space, bristling with weaponry and exuding an aura of unassailable dominance. Yet, as they drew closer, Adrian's focus sharpened. This was their moment. "Deploying the Trojan," Samir announced. The missile-like device detached from the shuttle's undercarriage and drifted silently toward the hangar bay. A collective breath was held as it approached the force field that shielded the hangar. "Probe is through," Samir confirmed. "No alarms. It's inside." Adrian exhaled slowly. Phase 1 complete. Now comes the fun part. Back on Earth, the Orithon commander watched the planet from the bridge of his flagship, confident in the Dominion's absolute control. Yet, in the shadows of his own ship, humanity's defiance had already begun to take root. The Trojan's countdown had started, and with it, the first threads of the Dominion's unraveling. Adrian leaned back in his seat, a glint of determination in his eyes. "You forgot rule number 1, he muttered under his breath, his voice laced with defiant certainty. "Never underestimate humanity." The Trojan's countdown began the moment it integrated into the Zenith Primarch's systems. Invisible to the Orithons, it spread like a virus, probing and subverting their firewalls with every passing second. Inside the shuttle, tension was palpable. The faint hum of the Trojan's signal filled the cabin, mingling with the quiet, shallow breaths of the team as they awaited their first sign of success. Back aboard the shuttle, Adrian's gaze remained fixed on the display showing the Trojan's progress. A thin, green bar slowly filled, signaling the unfolding chaos. "We're in their network," Samir reported, his voice taut with restrained excitement. "Trojans bypassed their initial defenses. It's targeting their primary command protocols now." "Good," Adrian said, his tone calm but firm. "Keep monitoring. We need confirmation that it's reached their core systems." Around them, the darkness of space seemed to pulse with anticipation. Through the viewport, the massive Orithon flagship dominated the view, its crystalline surface shimmering faintly under distant starlight. The Zenith Primarch exuded an aura of invincibility, but Adrian knew better. Beneath its flawless surface, vulnerabilities were unraveling like threads in a taut web, ready to snap under the strain. Inside the flagship's command center, Orithon officers moved with their usual precision. Their metallic exoskeletons gleamed under the cold, white light, and their voices hummed in clipped, musical tones as they monitored Earth's subdued surface. The commander, his angular face betraying no emotion, stood at the central console. His glowing eyes scanned a holographic map of Earth, each conquered zone marked with clinical efficiency. "Status," the commander demanded, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "All systems operational," replied a subordinate, their tone calm. "No anomalies detected." Yet, beneath their confidence, the Trojan was already rewriting their reality. Tiny anomalies began to appear. Minor delays in data transfers, a flicker in one of the display screens. The changes were subtle, almost imperceptible. But they were the first hints of a storm brewing within the Orithon stronghold. "Adrian, we've got movement," Samir said suddenly, his fingers flying over the controls. The Trojans triggered their automated countermeasures. "They're trying to isolate it." Adrian leaned forward, his expression sharpening. "Can they stop it?" "Unlikely," Samir replied, though his tone carried an edge of uncertainty. "But they'll slow it down. We need to manually push it through the final layers." "That's not exactly subtle," Maya interjected, her eyes narrowing. They'll know we're here. They probably already do, Adrian said with a wry smile. But subtlety's overrated when the clock's ticking. Samir, do it? Samir nodded, his hands a blur on the console, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead under the dim cabin lights. On the display, the green bar surged forward, bypassing layers of Ori-then encryption. His jaw clenched as he muttered under his breath, the weight of the mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. As it neared completion, the shuttle's proximity alarm blared. Hostiles incoming, Maya shouted, pulling up the external feed. A squadron of sleek Ori-then interceptors appeared, their engines glowing like distant stars. They closed in fast, their intent unmistakable. Brace yourselves, Adrian barked. Maya, get us out of here. Samir, keep that Trojan running. The shuttle pitched violently as Maya executed a sharp evasive maneuver. Plasma bolts streaked past them with searing hisses, and the cockpit was awash with flickering red warnings as the shields absorbed the impacts. The hull groaned under the strain, the vibrations resonating through the cabin as the team clung tightly to their harnesses, their breaths quick and shallow. The team held on tightly, the cabin filled with the hum of stress systems and the occasional crackle of sparks. Shields at 50%. Maya reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. We can't take much more of this. Just a little longer, Adrian shouted. His eyes darted between the external feed and the Trojan's progress bar, which inched closer to completion. On the zenith premarch, the anomalies had grown too large to ignore. Displays flickered erratically and command protocols began looping unpredictably. The Ori-then commander's composed demeanor cracked slightly as he turned to his officers. Explain this, he demanded. Unknown interference detected, a subordinate replied. Source unclear, but it's spreading through our core systems. The commander's glowing eyes narrowed. Purge it. Immediately. Their hands moved rapidly across the consoles, but the Trojan was already too deep. It had reached the heart of their network, embedding itself within the flagship's primary systems. Suddenly, the lights in the command center dimmed, replaced by a harsh red glow. Alarms blared, their piercing tones echoing through the massive ship. Core systems compromised, a synthetic voice announced. Structural integrity at risk? Trojans hit the core. Samir exclaimed, his voice triumphant. Their systems are collapsing. About damn time, Adrian muttered, gripping the edge of his seat as the shuttle shuddered under another impact. Maya, get us clear before they take us down with them. On it, she replied, her hands flying over the controls. The shuttle banked sharply, weaving through the chaos as the Ori-then interceptors pressed their attack. Behind them, the zenith premarch began to falter. Sections of its crystalline hull darkened and shattered, fragments spiraling into the void. Commander, they're breaking apart, Samir shouted. We've got debris incoming. Hold steady, Adrian ordered. Maya, keep us out of the crossfire. The shuttle darted through the field of debris, the team's breaths coming in ragged bursts as they dodged collapsing fragments of the flagship. A massive explosion erupted behind them, illuminating the void in a blinding flash. The zenith premarch was gone, reduced to a field of glowing wreckage. Silence fell in the shuttle as the team processed what they had just accomplished. Samir leaned back in his chair, letting out a shaky laugh, his hands trembling slightly as adrenaline ebbed. Maya exhaled deeply, wiping sweat from her brow, while Adrian leaned forward, his head momentarily bowed as the weight of relief mixed with the looming reality of what lay ahead. We actually did it, Samir said, his voice a mix of disbelief and quiet triumph. Adrian's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. We bought ourselves some breathing room, but this isn't over. The Dominion will regroup. Maya glanced over her shoulder, her face framed by the dim cockpit lights. Then what's the next move? Adrian allowed himself a small smile. We remind them of rule number 1 over and over again until they finally get it. The aftermath of the zenith premarch's destruction rippled through the Ori-then Dominion like a seismic shockwave. Across their vast fleet, commands faltered, coordination crumbled, and confusion reigned. Without their flagship's central guidance, the once unified armada fractured into isolated units, each struggling to adapt to the sudden loss of leadership. Morale among the Ori-then forces plummeted, their sense of invincibility shattered as whispers of uncertainty spread through their ranks. For the first time in the war, humanity's resistance had struck a blow not just to the Orithan's infrastructure, but to their sense of invincibility. Back aboard the UES Resolute, Adrian and his team convened in the dimly lit war room. A holographic projection of the shattered remains of the Zenith Premarch rotated slowly above the central table, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across their faces. The atmosphere was heavy, a mix of triumph and the sobering realization of the battle yet to come. "We've disrupted their network," Samir began, his voice steady but subdued. "Their fleet's coordination is in shambles, and their ground forces are cut off from centralized command. But this isn't a permanent victory." Maya crossed her arms, leaning against the table. "They'll regroup. It's what they do." Adrian nodded, his expression grim. "And we'll be ready. But we can't just hold the line anymore. We have to push. Take the fight to them while they're vulnerable." Taya, the team's communications specialist, frowned. "How? Even with the Zenith Premarch gone, their numbers still dwarf ours. And we're working with scraps." Adrian gestured to the projection. "Scraps are what we do best. We've got intel from the Trojan, fragmented but usable. It was recovered through layers of Orythan encryption, pieced together by Samir's relentless efforts. It points to a new target. Something critical." The hologram shifted, displaying a massive structure floating in the depths of space. Unlike the sleek, crystalline design of the Zenith Premarch, this facility was industrial and brutalist, its surface bristling with defensive emplacements. Taya's eyes widened as she studied the display. "That's their primary production facility," she said. "If we take that out, we cripple their ability to rebuild," Adrian finished. "No reinforcements. No new weapons. They'll be stuck fighting a war of attrition they can't win." The mission briefing was short and to the point. The facility, codenamed Oblivion Spire, was heavily fortified and surrounded by an asteroid field dense with automated defenses. Any assault would require precision, coordination, and an abundance of sheer nerve. Adrian's team, along with a select squad of allied operatives, would lead the strike. Hours later, the Resolute emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the asteroid field. The scene beyond the viewport was both beautiful and foreboding. Jagged rocks floated in an intricate dance, their surfaces glinting in the light of a distant star. The faint hum of the shuttle's engines resonated through the cabin, blending with the subtle vibrations as it navigated the asteroid field, heightening the sense of imminent danger. In the center of it all loomed the Oblivion Spire, a monolith of war and industry. "Everyone knows their roles," Adrian said as he stood on the bridge, his voice carrying a weight of authority. "This isn't just about survival anymore. This is about making sure they never do this to anyone else. Let's move." The assault began with calculated chaos. The Resolute and its fleet engaged the Orythan defenses head-on, drawing fire away from the strike team's shuttle as it weaved through the asteroid field. Maya piloted the shuttle with surgical precision, narrowly avoiding collisions and automated turrets. Inside the shuttle, the tension was palpable. Adrian double-checked his gear, his mind racing through the plan. Beside him, Taya monitored their communications, her fingers flying over her console as she jammed enemy signals and fed false data into their systems. "We're coming up on the entry point," Maya called out, her voice steady despite the turbulence. "Brace yourselves." The shuttle docked with a metallic thud, its magnetic clamps locking onto the facility's hull. Adrian led the charge, his weapon raised as the airlock cycled open. The corridor beyond was dimly lit, the hum of machinery resonating through the walls. They moved swiftly, their boots silent against the metal floor. "Stay sharp," Adrian murmured. "We don't know what surprises they've got waiting for us." The first encounter came quickly. Orythan guards, alerted by the breach, emerged from adjoining corridors. The firefight was brief but intense, with the team executing their maneuvers with razor-sharp focus, each member acting in seamless synchronization to overwhelm the enemy's numbers. Plasma bolts scorched the walls, and the air filled with the acrid scent of burned metal and ozone. "Clear?" Jax shouted, his weapon still trained on the now empty corridor. Adrian motioned for the team to move forward. Their objective was deep within the facility, the main reactor core. If they could disable it, the resulting chain reaction would destroy the Oblivion Spire and everything it produced. As they descended deeper into the facility, resistance intensified. The corridors became a maze of intersecting paths, each one defended by entrenched Orythan forces. The team moved with practiced efficiency, their training and experience shining through as they pushed forward. In the reactor chamber, the scale of their task became clear. The core was massive, a pulsating sphere of energy suspended in a lattice of conduits and supports. The room was bathed in an eerie blue light, and the hum of raw power was almost deafening. "Samir, Taya, get to work," Adrian ordered. "Jax, Maya, cover them. I'll watch the main entrance. As Samir and Taya worked to rig the charges, the team's comms crackled with interference. Adrian's gaze flicked toward the entrance, his instinct screaming a warning. Moments later, the doors burst open and a wave of Orythan soldiers poured in. Contact! Adrian shouted, opening fire. The room erupted into chaos as the team fought to hold their ground. Maya's precision shots and Jax's unrelenting fire kept the enemy at bay, but the pressure was mounting. Charges set. Samir yelled over the din, "We've got 2 minutes. Fall back." Adrian commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. Move now. The team retreated in a controlled rush, plasma fire chasing them every step of the way. The reactor's hum grew louder, its energy destabilizing as the charges began their countdown. They reached the shuttle just as the first explosions rippled through the facility. From the safety of the Resolute, Adrian and his team watched as the Oblivion Spire imploded, its destruction sending shockwaves through the asteroid field. Cheers erupted on the bridge, a rare moment of unrestrained celebration. Adrian allowed himself a brief smile before turning to his team. We've hit them where it hurts. But this isn't the end. Not yet. Maya stepped forward, her expression resolute. Then we keep going. Until they're finished? Adrian met her gaze, his determination unwavering. Rule number 1, he said quietly. Never underestimate humanity. The room seemed to absorb his words, the weight of their victory settling over the team. For a fleeting moment, exhaustion gave way to a shared sense of resolve. They had dealt a critical blow, but the battle ahead would demand even more of their ingenuity and strength. The destruction of the Oblivion Spire sent shockwaves across the galaxy, both literal and metaphorical. Across the heavens, bursts of light illuminated the void as debris scattered, and a low, reverberating hum echoed across the fleet's communication channels, a haunting reminder of the power unleashed. The Orythan Dominion's relentless war machine ground to a halt as their production capabilities collapsed. But Adrian knew the fight was far from over. Their victory had bought humanity precious time, but the Dominion's retaliation was inevitable. And this time it wouldn't just be about domination, it would be personal. On the UES Resolute, the war room was alive with activity. Holographic projections of Dominion fleet movements and intercepted communications flickered above the central table. Adrian stood at its head, his expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. They've pulled back their outer fleets, Samir reported, gesturing to the glowing icons on the map. They're consolidating forces around their central stronghold, Erythian Prime. Maya's brows furrowed. They're pulling everything back to one location? Why? Because we've cornered them, Adrian said, his voice firm. They know they can't sustain a drawn-out war anymore. They're betting everything on one final stand. If we take Erythian Prime, we take the Dominion? Taya frowned, arms crossed. That's their heart. Their command center. It'll be a fortress. It will, Adrian agreed. But it's also their last weakness. If we strike hard enough, fast enough, they won't have time to recover. The final mission briefing was grim yet resolute. The Allied fleet, bolstered by newly inspired species who had seen humanity's resilience, would converge on Erythian Prime. Adrian's team would lead the ground assault, infiltrating the Dominion's central command and dismantling their control systems from within. Hours later, the fleet emerged from hyperspace. The sight before them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Erythian Prime hovered against the backdrop of a dying red star, its massive structure radiating power. The planet was encased in layers of orbital defenses, massive cannons that roared with energy, shimmering fields emitting a low, ominous hum, and swarms of fighter ships weaving a chaotic dance of destruction. Adrian stood on the Resolute's bridge, his jaw set as he surveyed the daunting sight. This is it, he said quietly. All or nothing. They know we're coming, Maya said, her voice low but steady. No turning back now. Adrian turned to his crew. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every species they've subjugated, for every world they've torn apart. Remember that? The assault began in chaos and fire. The Allied fleet clashed with the Dominion's defenses, plasma bolts and energy beams illuminating the void in a dazzling yet deadly display. On board the shuttle, Adrian's team prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. Entry point locked, Maya called out as the shuttle streaked toward the planet's surface. Brace for heavy fire. The shuttle rattled violently as anti-aircraft fire filled the skies. Adrian gripped his harness, his voice calm but commanding. Stay focused. We get in, we hit them hard, and we get out. No second chances. The shuttle crash-landed in a barren courtyard, its hull smoking. Adrian was the first to emerge, his weapon raised as he scanned the area. Taya followed, jamming enemy communications as Samir deployed a portable shield generator to protect their entry point. They moved swiftly through the outer defenses, encountering heavy resistance at every turn. The Dominion soldiers fought with desperate ferocity, their once overwhelming precision now marred by fear and chaos. The team pushed forward, their coordination and resolve cutting through the enemy ranks. Inside the Central Command Complex, the scale of the Dominion's power became clear. The corridors were lined with glowing conduits, pulsating with energy. Massive data cores loomed above them, containing centuries of information that had enabled the Dominion's conquests. "This is it," Adrian said, his voice steady. "Taya, Samir, get into their systems. Maya, Jax, cover them. I'll secure the perimeter." As Samir and Taya hacked into the central system, the room shook violently. Adrian's comm crackled as Jax's voice came through. "We've got incoming. Heavy reinforcements." Adrian moved to the front lines, his weapon blazing as Dominion forces poured into the chamber. Maya's precision fire and Jax's unrelenting defense held the line, but the pressure was mounting. "We need more time," Samir shouted, his fingers flying across the console. "Their encryption is insane." "You've got 60 seconds, Adrian replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Make it count." The team fought with everything they had, their movements fueled by sheer determination. Just as the enemy began to overwhelm them, Samir's voice rang out. "We're in. Shutting them down now." A massive pulse of energy surged through the complex as the Dominion systems collapsed. Lights flickered, and the once mighty hum of power faded into silence. The enemy forces hesitated, their coordination breaking down entirely. "Fall back," Adrian commanded. "Get to the shuttle." The team moved swiftly, the searing heat of plasma bolts scorching the air around them, each step propelled by the urgency of impending collapse. They reached the shuttle just as the complex began to implode. Maya piloted them out with precision, the shuttle narrowly escaping the collapsing structure. Back aboard the Resolute, the Allied fleet erupted into cheers as Erythian Prime crumbled. The Dominion Central Command was no more, their once unstoppable war machine now fractured beyond repair. Adrian stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the dying red star that had been the backdrop of their final battle. The star's dimming light seemed to mirror the collapse of the Dominion, a once blazing force now reduced to fading embers. Yet, in that waning glow, Adrian saw something more, a quiet promise of renewal, a reminder of humanity's endurance even in the face of overwhelming darkness. "It's over," he said quietly, the weight of their victory settling over him. Maya stepped beside him, her expression a mix of exhaustion and pride. "We did it. They'll never forget this day." Adrian allowed himself a small smile. "Neither will we. But this isn't just about remembering. It's about rebuilding. We've won the battle, but now we have to win the peace." As the Resolute began its journey home, the stars stretched before them, a reminder of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Humanity had faced the impossible and triumphed, proving once again why the universe should never underestimate them. Yet, the weight of their achievement came with the memory of sacrifices made along the way, lost comrades, shattered worlds, and the scars of battle. Adrian knew their victory was not just a testament to their resilience but a call to honor those who had fallen by building a future worthy of their struggle. The end.